Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. There's a lot going on, and I had planned for a rather long call for today, but that's not going to happen. This is going to be a shorter call for the simple reason that I have the flu, and I'm having a hard time concentrating. But I'll do the best that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into the call. As I've been saying the last couple of calls, I'm going to just dispose with the disclaimer that we used. We're far beyond that now because, in my opinion, this thing's just about over. And we should all be in the banks in the very near future. There is a lot going on, but I'm going to try to truncate it a little bit and just bottom line everything for you. Now, there has been a little bit of a holdup where the budget was concerned because of the sticking point seemed to be Article 12 of the 2025 budget, which dealt with the production and distribution of oil from Kurdistan to SOMO. Now, SOMO is an acronym which stands for State Organization for the Marketing Oil. It's the only company authorized for the import and export of oil in country. And, of course, it's the usual suspects that are dragging their feet, individuals on the Parliamentary Finance Committee and some of the pro-Iranian officials as well. But this is probably going to be their last gasp. They're getting steamrolled, and they should. Prime Minister Soudani has been working toward Dr. Shabibi's protocol, which is the stability and security of Iraq. So we have the budget, we have Article 140, we have the HCL, all of these things need or are waiting on a new exchange rate. And as I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, there is a new exchange rate. We just haven't been privy to it, but I think we will be very shortly. We know that, of course, in Baghdad, they've established new bank accounts pursuant to the new laws and their new currency. Retroactive salaries are being paid. Now we see that Kurdistan is establishing similar bank accounts as well. There's also been a series of meetings, regional meetings between Kurdistan, Turkey, and Syria, which is one of the reasons why Article 12 is having such impact, because it has to do, once again, with the import and export of oil. Then there was a meeting between the government of Iraq and the IBBC. Now, the IBBC is the International Banking, Business, and Credits. So, once again, they're fulfilling their obligations with regard to the international regulations with regard to sound banking. Then there was a meeting with the government of Iraq and BP, which is, of course, a global oil company, for the extraction and refinement of oil. I think the most revealing thing, however, was the recent testimony of Scott Bessent. He's a hedge fund billionaire who was testifying in Congress, and he's Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. Treasury Secretary. He said a number of things that might seem rather innocuous to the average American, but for those of us that have currencies and have been paying a little bit more attention to exactly what's going on, he made some incredibly revealing statements. He said, for example, that he supports Donald Trump with regard to strategic tariffs having to do with the new golden age. And as I've said before, the golden age that Donald Trump and others in his administration are referring to as an age in American history between roughly 1880 and 1910, where the United States grew dramatically and as it became a very rich nation. Ironically, there was no central bank at the time as well, but they made money primarily through tariffs. So if you couple the increased revenue through tariffs with basically Trump's assault on the Federal Reserve, he began, of course, now as you know, the Federal Reserve is funded by taxes, and of course he wants to no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, some other things he's thrown in there. So he's very slowly putting the squeeze on the Federal Reserve. This individual, Scott Bessett, also discussed the global reset and Basel compliance, although he didn't use those words, but he alluded to them in his discussions. And he's also made kind of a comment about discussing the transition with the banks. Well, of course, the global reset and Basel compliance has to do specifically with pre-valued currencies. Number one on that list, of course, is the IQD. So this is where we find ourselves today. There's no need to belabor it really much further than that. I am going to mention one thing, though. The global currency reset, Basel compliance, Iraqi dinar, some of these other currencies, we're going to be seeing radical changes globally. One of the changes is going to be coupled with the tariffs, the fact that once a currency is Basel compliant, that means that countries like China cannot artificially devalue their currency to corner a trade market. Everything's going to be based on fair value. As American citizens, basically, this is going to be such a substantial change in the way things are done and such a substantial change in the respective wealth of citizens. There's basically going to be two groups of citizens, those that have the IQD and some of these other pre-valued currencies along with cryptos, and those that don't. Now, among those that do have the IQD, some of the other currencies and cryptos are going to be individuals that have established trusts and those that have not established trust. There is a distinct advantage to establishing a trust and transferring wealth, and particularly pre-valued currencies, to the trust before they revalue, and you're running out of time where that's concerned, because you will hide forever your possession of that wealth because it's not titled to you, it's in trust. And what are the advantages of the trust? Privacy and anonymity, your ability to avoid IRS scrutiny because the business activities occur within the trust, not you personally. Free RV gifting. You can gift currencies to family and friends through the trust and control the post-RV proceeds, and there are situations where you might want to do that. You're going to be able to avoid probate and the federal estate tax. Now, this is important because if the assets are in trust, that means that 100 cents on the dollar of your estate will be able to be transferred from you to your heirs and subsequent generations. If your assets are outside of a trust, the federal estate tax for that portion of your estate in excess of $12 million can be as much as 65%. That's 2/3 of the entire estate. But you bypass all of that, and again, you transfer 100 cents on the dollar to your heirs, children, grandchildren, and so forth. But there's other benefits to the trust as well. Very simply, there's something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What this means is you can only be sued for what you actually hold in title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's say, for example, you had 10 million dinar, you paid $10,000 for it, you transfer it to our trust, it subsequently revalues very conservatively for, say, $1. You now have 10 million in trust. Can you be sued for 10 million? No. Why? Because when you transfer the currency to the trust, that property, that currency was only worth $10,000. Post-RV, there is a strategy called segregation of assets. By placing your assets, homes, cars, boats, etc., in other individual sub-trusts, you limit any potential litigation post-RV because the assets are in separate trusts. So if, for example, you're in a car accident, it's only that asset involved in litigation because your other assets are in other sub-trusts not subject to the litigation. If you have a rental property and someone's injured, once again, it's only that one asset that's involved because segregation of assets by definition means you're minimizing any litigation risk through the process of setting up multiple sub-trusts. Now, our trust package, You know what? I'm not even going to get into the cost of the trust package or any of that today. I'm just frankly not up to it. I'm sorry that this is a short call, but I do want to say that those of us that have been involved in this, some of us for decades, it's all coming to fruition. One thing I did want to mention, I forgot to mention it, is in his testimony, the new Treasury Secretary mentioned that he is going to be having a meeting with the CBI of Iraq. Now, why would he mention that? Why is that important? I mean, that's a mind blower right there. Donald Trump wants to utilize the Iraqi dinar, which we hold in reserve. I think what his plan is to substantially reduce or eliminate our debt to the Federal Reserve, meaning that frees up over $1 trillion. I think it's $1.1 trillion a year in interest that we were paying to the Federal Reserve. Well, what's he going to do with that money? Well, one thing he's been talking about is that Iron Dome that Israel has, building it for the entire United States, because there's a lot of talk about the hypersonic missiles that both Russia and China have. So I think we're in good hands with President Trump. I think he's going to bring us into this new golden age. I think it's going to be a period of great wealth for this country and for citizens individually. I think that will be particularly the case for those of us that have dinar and some of these other currencies. And I've discussed it briefly in the past, but I think the Iraqi dinar is going to be the linchpin for a lot of other currencies, particularly the Vietnamese dong. I would not be surprised to see the Vietnamese dong revalue globally and be on the Forex before the end of the year. And a lot of our clients have a substantial amount of dong. As a matter of fact, we have some people that have more dong than dinar. And so this should bode very well for them. But this is a period of time where the United States' wealth is going to increase substantially for citizens as well. And any individual, knowledgeable, wealthy individual knows that the best thing you can do to protect and preserve your wealth for yourself and generations to come is to place it in trust. This is where all the knowledgeable people have their wealth. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a quick example just because of what's going on in Washington right now. Right now, RFK Jr. is testifying, and unfortunately, Caroline Kennedy sent a very negative letter about him to the hearing because she differs with him politically on a number of issues. But people might forget that a few years back, Caroline Kennedy actually wanted to run for the Senate. But when she found out that she was going to have to disclose her finances that are in trust, she backed out entirely. And, it's interesting, the Kennedy family is another really example of how powerful these trusts are because, the Kennedy family for generations has been in the limelight. They've been political figures. They've suffered incredible tragedies. Many books have been written about them, all the, the picadillos and the affairs and all of the things that can happen in large families. But despite their best efforts, no one has been able to pierce the trust to find out exactly what they're worth, where their wealth is, and all of that. That's because their wealth are in trust, very similar to the trust package that we've utilized for our clients. So if you are a dinarian and you have not at least contacted us to get our initial no-obligation package, you better do so, and you better do so quickly. Because once the dinar and these other currencies hit the Forex, you're not going to be able to hide that wealth. You're not going to be able to protect that wealth. So you can contact us by either email or phone. Our email address is Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com. That's Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com. Or our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. I'm sorry for making it such a short call. We're in a very, very good place with the dinar, but I'm just not up to it today. I apologize. I'll try to make up for it next week and have a very long call, although we may have a very different call next week the way things are going right now. Let's hope that this long ride is over, and it's over very shortly. And then those of you that do have the trusts, we'll be spending our time discussing how they operate, how we fund them, how you're going to work with your trustee. And when you post RVC, the benefits available, you'll be very glad that you established this trust prior to accumulating this windfall. So thanks so much for listening to the call, everyone. Again, I apologize, but I'm just I'm not feeling very well today, and I'm about exhausted just from this few minutes speaking. So our next call, of course, will be next week. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening. Keep your fingers crossed, people. Things are moving in the right direction. And the gentleman in the White House right now wants to get this thing done. And love him or hate him, people have to admit when he wants to do something, he pretty much does it. Take care and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.